Marina Joyce teach us about mental illness? I start by saying this comes with a trigger warning. I do talk about things around mental illness that you might find triggering or distressing, so if you think that might happen, watch with caution. I'm not going to go into graphic detail about anything, I'll just make mention of things, so just be aware of that. Also, I'm going to be saying mental illness about 1,000,000 times in this video. It's unavoidable, so I'm not going to go into the whole situation. You can Google it, you can watch YouTube, it's everywhere. Marina Joyce was a young woman who seemed to be in some sort of mental distress, or at least she seems not like her usual self, and that has people alarmed. They're concerned for her, and then situations got out of hand, and the things that people are imagining that might have happened to her have gradually kind of got weirder and weirder, and we're at a point now where there's nothing that people can do, so I think they feel helpless and they end up working themselves up to an emotional peak in some ways. So I wanted to talk about this from a different angle, ask what can we learn from the situation, how can we get something good out of this, both for Marina and for those that have felt like they've had that emotional connection to the story. So here we go. I'd like everyone to remember that Marina's actually given us a really good opportunity to talk about mental health and to allow people to be more open about it. It could result in some other people talking about their own mental health, and that might help them to manage their mental health. And then anything that helps us break down the stigma that's associated with mental illness is a good thing. It can be difficult, it doesn't always feel nice to talk about these things, but it does help to change the culture, and that's what we need to do the most. This is a mental health channel. I was diagnosed with one of the more severe forms of mental illness just over 20 years ago, so I've spent many months as a day patient in secure units and also in eating disorder units. I've been on lots of different types of medications, and I've had lots of different talking therapies, also diagnoses of depression and anxiety and all the things that kind of come along as symptoms of my particular illness. If you want to read more about that, there's a link in the description box. Please go and have a look at that. I'll probably be on medication for the rest of my life, and I accept that although there are some side effects to most medications, the ones that I'm taking are working for me at the moment, which is the most important thing. I definitely do not support the idea that to be well you need to be off medication. If you compare it to, say, diabetes, diabetics are not expected to suddenly start producing insulin in the right way. If you're an insulin dependent diabetic, you have to take insulin for the rest of your life. That doesn't make you weak. That doesn't mean that you can't lead a normal life. It's just something that you have to get used to doing and accept that is part of your life. Our bodies all work differently, our minds all work differently. It's no different to having a physical illness. You would treat it in the same way, really. And for me, recovery is about learning to live with my illness and alongside it, rather than letting it control everything I do and stopping me from doing the things that I want to do in my life. I've experienced delusions, hallucinations, both auditory and visual ones. So I've seen things that aren't there, I've believed things that aren't true. I've also been in the darker periods of my life. I've been on the verge of suicide often, and I felt during those times that I would never get through it, that it was just never going to improve, and this was going to be my life for the rest of forever. But it wasn't. It passed in the end. I was supported to get well, and I think people need to remember that getting a diagnosis of a mental illness is not a death sentence. I said this to someone in the comments section yesterday, and I kind of the comment back was that I need to educate myself because schizophrenia that she was talking about is serious, and of course I understand that. I've got my own diagnosis. It's very serious and it can be life-threatening. In fact, the two of my diagnoses that have affected my life the most are two of the most deadly mental illnesses. So I do understand that they're serious. I just think that you need to also have hope that you can although it's fluctuating, you can live a life, you can do all the things that others do. You know, I've got a job and I've got a family, I'm a parent, I manage all of those things. Even when it's difficult, I still do it, and it's possible. It's also important to note that obviously schizophrenia is the word that people are throwing out there when it comes to Marina Joyce's situation. On average, people with schizophrenia in the UK die 20 years younger than they should, as a result of physical illnesses that are entirely preventable, and that's because often their physical symptoms are not taken seriously because they have a mental health diagnosis. And I've experienced that firsthand from doctors. It's really important to remember that 1 in 4 of us will have a mental health problem at some point during our lives, and so that means that 1 in 4 people you know probably will, or probably has, or your family or whoever else that you are around on a daily basis. So learning about mental illness and learning how to support people that are experiencing mental illness is really important. And I think if you take anything away from this situation with Marina Joyce, please take it as an opportunity to learn and to grow and to develop your understanding of what it's like to be distressed and to need support. People often say that mental illness is a personal thing. I agree with that. It's definitely a personal thing, and it's different. It feels different for everybody, and it is different for everybody. The language of that sometimes concerns me, because I feel like people are almost saying it's a personal problem. It's not something you should express at work. It's not something you should bring to your friends. It's something you should keep inside yourself and you should be ashamed of somehow. And obviously I know that that's not the way that people mean it, but it can add to, it's like a subconscious messaging that we all get through the language that we use. So whilst it's personal to everybody, if someone wants to share that information, then they should absolutely be supported in doing so. It's really important for people to feel like they have agency, like they've got some control over their own lives and over their condition. So giving them, empowering them to talk about it and to share that information can be a really big part of them kind of getting back towards stability. And the other thing is that because someone lives their life very publicly, they put videos on the internet, they talk about themselves to strangers on the internet, that doesn't mean that the internet owns them, and it doesn't mean that they owe their viewers anything at all. So the idea that someone would have to admit to a mental illness or to a drug addiction or to anything that is, you know, an issue for them in that way, that's a bit ridiculous, because admitting something suggests that it's a crime or it's an offence in some way, and it's not a crime to have a drug addiction or a mental illness. It's not something that you should have to own up to in some way. I've seen some really shockingly abusive comments that people have posted since it's been suggested that she did a YouNow interview where she seemed to suggest that it was all a bit of a misunderstanding, but I personally, I don't think that she meant it in that way. People were reacting as if she was saying that it was a publicity stunt, which she never said that. And then saying, you know, you effing bitch, how could you do this to us? It's terrifying to me that people would actually, they couldn't think a bit further along and understand that if she does have some sort of a mental illness, then it's likely that she doesn't understand, or that she's not aware of the way that she's coming across. If someone were to pull a stunt like that, then they have their own issues anyway, emotionally, because it's such a strange and odd thing to do. When a psychiatrist or whoever it is, a psychologist, is diagnosing someone, they will spend a lot of time with that person, asking them questions about their lives, getting a vague timeline of things in their lives that might have impacted on them, anything traumatic or even just a change that they went through, and how that relates to, you know, triggering certain behaviours or certain feelings in them, times in their life when they might have feel the way they do now, at other times in their life, and what was going on at those times. Is there any patterns there? What sort of behaviour is it that they're exhibiting? They might talk to their family and friends and ask them, whether this person is acting erratically compared to normal, or whether they have done or said things that were really shocking or unexpected. They will build up this whole picture over more than one appointment normally before they even make a diagnosis. And even then, sometimes it's not the diagnosis that's important, it's the effect of the illness on that person. So although you might have two people with schizophrenia, one person will respond to one medication and another one won't. So you can't just say, okay, well, you've got that label on you now, so we know that we can cure you by giving you this drug. It doesn't work like that. Even with illnesses that have very much the same causes or biology behind them. So often there are actual differences that, like for my brain, is structurally different to a normal brain, let's say. It works in a different way. So it has a biological basis. It's not just some intangible thing, where your mind is on another plane of existence. It's a physical thing. It's in here. Your brain is like made of tissue and blood and grey matter and thousands of electrical connections. So having something going wrong in there is a biological thing. It has a biological basis. If you've ever had the flu, you might know that if you have a high temperature, you might be a bit delusional. You might start saying things that don't make sense or hallucinating. Often people have quite disturbing hallucinations when they have flu, which just goes to show that something as simple as a high temperature can make you have a kind of psychotic experience. So there are lots of different illnesses that will cause psychosis. Mine has been caused in the past by some drugs, and also, and I mean prescribed drugs, and also when, if I've been under a lot of stress, I might start to find it difficult to piece my sentences together because my brain's having to work harder to deal with my illness and what's going on there. So having any extra stress kind of makes the cogs start grinding together a bit. Things don't work as smoothly, and therefore when you're trying to think when you're speaking, it can become quite slow and quite difficult. Maybe your words don't make sense. It's called word salad. You'll see this as well in people with dementia and Alzheimer's, where they still know how to speak. They still know what words mean. They still know their language. So English, for me, I would still know, but it's just the way that they put the words together doesn't come out the way it should. Another issue people have been discussing is the fact that her mum's been in some of her videos, saying she's fine and she's living at home with parents, obviously. If someone becomes ill and has a psychotic episode or an experience of some kind and they are being given medication, it doesn't just work like that. It takes quite a while for medication to work often, so you might not notice any improvement for a while. You can't do anything about that, and it's the wrong way to approach it, to say, well, oh, you saw I don't know, think of a random thing. You saw a Smurf over there, but don't be ridiculous, there's no Smurf over there. You can, in some ways, you're performing mental health first aid, that's what it's known as. And the advice there is to acknowledge that that person is having an experience that they might find frightening, or they might find it funny, or any amount of emotions. You acknowledge the fact that they're seeing that, and that must be difficult for them, or it must be amusing to them, and just keep reaffirming that you're there to support that person. It doesn't mean that you're denying that that person has an issue, but the focus should be on making sure that that person is as stable as possible, is as under as little stress as possible, is in an environment they're comfortable with, that they feel safe in, with people that love them and care for them around them, and who are, in some senses, just for the time being, going along with things, because that's the only way you can really support that person properly. And also, her making videos when she's a bit poorly might be useful to her. It's often a way of providing some level of normality, so that person still thinks that they have a purpose. You know, work is often a really big part of recovery. It helps to have a structure and a routine and a reason to get up in the morning. So keeping that normality is probably the best thing that her parents can do for her. It's just unfortunate that whatever she puts out there now is being torn to pieces by people, and they're looking for meaning where there isn't meaning, and that's unfortunate. But her parents probably don't have very much choice in the matter right now. The value of this story is that it opens the doors to people that have probably never seen mental illness, the reality of mental illness, and just how it plays out, because this normally goes on behind closed doors, but now increasingly we're seeing people on social media who are still making content when they're obviously very unwell, and it's there then for all time. They will always be able to see themselves going through that experience, which could be, it's a double-edged sword really. So it could be that helps them to know that they are now not in that situation, they're doing well, they can see how far they've come. Or it might be a constant reminder. If people don't leave it alone, then they will label her as, you know, she's that crazy girl who did this on YouTube and who, you know, went into mental decline very publicly. Think about how traumatic that might be, especially for someone who's trying to recover or who's trying to get back to stability. It's really unfair that that person then has to also manage the expectations of others on them, and be made responsible for the emotions of thousands of people, or millions now, that are subscribed to you just for the freak show. Or it's really unfair to think of it as a freak show, because this is her life. She doesn't get to, you know, she'll switch off the camera and then go and talk the way she's been talking to her family. She'll be, you know, awake at night or whatever. No, don't put this really badly. She doesn't get to switch the camera off and go away and do other things like you do. Once you've watched her video, you can get up, you can go and make yourself a snack, you can get on with the rest of your day. That is her life that you're seeing on the camera. So maybe if that can help you to understand or possibly recognise some of the signs of mental illness in others, in people that you care about, then that might be helpful. But please remember that she's a real person with real feelings, and she's got a future ahead of her that shouldn't be blighted by the fact that she uploaded content when she was unwell. I really hope people can see the irony in the fact that they're saying that Marina is delusional whilst simultaneously making up stories about her being kidnapped by ISIS, which sounds pretty delusional to me. So just make it your business to learn everything you can about mental illness and to look after your own mental well-being and that of others. Just consider the things that you say and the impact that might have on somebody else. Look after each other. I really hope Marina gets well soon, and let's leave her alone so that she can do that as best as she can. Bye bye. I'm just back really. Sorry, I thought of more that I have to say. I've been seeing some people kind of attacking, not really attacking, but criticising Marina because of a recent video she made about weight loss, which obviously normally if you know anything about my channel, you know that I would jump straight on that and be very critical if I thought someone was giving out advice that was likely to lead especially young people astray. But I'd like you to think about the following things. Firstly, Marina is herself a very young person. She still lives at home with her family. She is experimenting with life. She's finding her way. She doesn't know what she's doing yet, as most of us will remember from being 19. Well, I certainly didn't. I still don't now. That's besides the point. But please bear in mind that if Marina is experiencing some kind of episode, some kind of breakdown, a mental illness, something along those lines, then criticising her for the factual accuracy of advice that she's providing about weight loss, which seems very innocent when you watch the video. She is kind of an innocent soul, it seems. If not, then she's a bloody good actor and she should get an Oscar. I'd be very surprised if that were the case. But please just give her a break. She's going through something. She probably doesn't even realise that she's coming across this way. From seeing the interviews with her, it's quite clear that she doesn't feel that what people are saying is accurate. She doesn't think there's anything wrong, or she's not aware of there being anything wrong. And I would like to think that she is blissfully unaware in a way. It would be nice if she felt happy with whatever it was that's happening, or, you know, if she's feeling not distressed, that's a good thing. Because trust me, when you aren't feeling good about a breakdown, if you are aware of having it, it's very distressing to have people questioning you all the time and saying that you're not making sense when you are. I remember feeling very cross about that, about the fact that people were saying, but you're not making any sense. And I really believed that I was making sense, and it annoyed me that people were trying to rob me of my independence and my agency. So yeah, I just wanted to say, please don't go after her when it comes to the whole weight loss thing, any of the other videos that she's making at the moment. She's clearly not in her right mind, and so it's rough to give her a hard time about that stuff. Anyway, that's it really. I'll see you again soon. I talk about mental health, by the way, a lot. It's my channel's raison d'etre, so please come and watch more videos about mental illness. Much of the time I'm just talking about my own personal experiences, so come and listen to some of those if you like. Some of them are pretty dramatic and probably good for a laugh. Anyway, see you later.